Hello, this is Bob Browner. We're recording this as a YouTube video this time so that during our webinar time we can spend more time just going through questions and answers. We'll see if this is a more efficient format than previous years, and let us know if you think this format works well for you. So by youth protection, what we mean is we want your student to be safe. We want you to remain safe and healthy and have an exchange you enjoy, an exchange where you get to start and finish. 9 out of 10 kids that we send out do just fine. Would love to have that be 10 out of 10. Some of the risks that you'll have during exchange, we'll go through one at a time here. First thing starting out, of course, is when you leave. We do have travel difficulties. Probably 1 or 2 out of every kid out of 10 kids we send doesn't go the route they think they do. They end up spending a little time in a hotel, in a airport, sleeping overnight, or they miss a connection. These things happen. We'll talk you through during your orientation what strategies you can use if you get lost along the way. Theft, unfortunately, usually we have 1 or 2 students a year who get pickpocketed. The most common loss is a smartphone. Illnesses and injuries happen as well. You have health insurance for a good reason, and of course your Rotary Club often has a physician in the club or connections to medical folks, so if anything does happen on exchange, you've got multiple backups. We've had this year, our worst one so far was a concussion that's happened during basketball, and I'm a physician and I took her to the emergency room for a CT scan because it was pretty severe, but everything turned out fine in the end. But these things do happen while you're on. My biggest fear is car accidents. That's the #1 threat to most people's health when they're traveling is actually automobile. We think of other things like terrorism and stuff like that, but really more commonplace things like automobiles are still the largest threat to our health. Sexual harassment, we worry a little bit about this. We'll talk a little bit about more toward the end, but there's also a whole section of it we'll do during your Outbound orientation in June when we're in Arkansas. We break the boys and girls into different groups and have a discussion with Rotexes about this, and we'll talk through some of these things. Natural disasters happen, whether it's floods, tornadoes, snowstorms, earthquakes, tsunamis, these happen. And it's not just other places, it's here. This is actually a tornado over Lake Manawa. I saw it from the ground because we had just picked up our Taiwanese student. We were driving by and saw it out of our window. Could see it right across the Missouri River from Omaha. The most common issue that we run into for people for unwilling returns, I'll say, is drug or alcohol problems. So if you have an incident that has its origins in drug and alcohol, that's probably one of the most common reasons you'll get sent home against your will. Luckily, we haven't had one of these for a couple years now, but most of our returns the last few years have been willing returns, meaning homesickness or family problems or things like that. But drug or alcohol, we cover this so many times because that's probably our most common reason for an unwilling return. Political unrest, some of you may see some demonstrations in Spain, for example. It's pretty common for the teachers or the students to strike every month or so. It's okay to watch these, but don't get involved. You as a foreign national do not have the same rights as a local person, and so getting involved could jeopardize your visa. So these might be interesting to watch from afar, but do not get involved with them. Best to keep your distance and watch it on TV. Getting stuck in an unsafe area of town can happen anywhere. Some of you go to small towns, just like small towns in Nebraska, where there really aren't any unsafe places, but there are some large cities where there just are places you don't go. Your host parents and families and Rotarians will probably let you know about this, but ask to see. Sometimes you may think your host parents are being overprotective, but sometimes it's because they're keeping you from places you don't know about yet. And as a new person, you don't really know what's safe and unsafe yet, so talk to them about it. Physical abuse is rare, but it does happen. One of the most important things is if it does happen and you're unsure about it, is to talk to somebody. Find a trusted adult, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Talk to your Rotexes, your counselors. Make sure that this is not something that is kept quiet. Same thing with verbal abuse, and same thing with sexual abuse. There's a higher risk for some of these things for those of you who are away for a couple of reasons. One, if you look different, this may make you a target. Bullies tend to find people who are different and by themselves. So the fact that you may be looking different, that you may have some trouble with communications, could make you a target. So what things could you do to stay away from this? Well, one is the learning more and more about your culture, learning about your support system, which we'll set up for you. These are things that will help you keep you safe. A couple things that we do proactively on the Rotary side, we are diligent about checking out your host family. At least in most the other countries are supposed to do this, and we have trusted relationship with most of the countries. What we do is locally is that every host camp family we have goes through background checks and application reference checks. We do an inspection of their home and an orientation, and we give you a list of local support services. So whenever you go on exchange, you should be getting something like this as sort of a contact card. This is one we actually use for our club, and in our at least for District 5650, where every student gets a list of their host parents, their emails, a club counselor, the president, the youth exchange officer, protection officer, and the district governor, and other contacts. So you should have a list of people that you could contact, so that if one of these people is not giving you the contact you think you should have, you can go above their heads to the next highest level. Um, some of the people may have wondered what this section F is on your application. This is actually kind of where this comes from. So when you go to another country, you're going to go on an educational visa. That requires that, one, you have a school that's going to take you in. You're a minor and you can't support yourself, so you have to have a host family to put a roof over your head and food on your table. You'll need a guardian because you're a minor, and that essentially is your Rotary host club. And these are the same people that you should turn to solve your problems. So if you're having a problem in your locality, most problems are best solved locally. So first start with your host family. You're living in their home, your host father, your mother, your host siblings. They can probably help you figure out what the problem is. If they're part of the problem, that's why you have an outlet. You have a club counselor that you can talk to, and your club counselor contact information will be on this form that you will receive. This is part of what gets you your visa. You should have this. Every year I get the student who says, well, I don't know how to get a hold of my counselor and I don't know who my YEO is. And I say, well, go pull out your section F. It's all right here. Occasionally, some of these things will change. So, for example, first host family identified in March, something could happen in the intervening time. So, a few years ago, we had a host family where the mother's father had a stroke and she had to go take care of them. So, this host family said, no, we can't, we'll have to bow out. And another host family had to replace them. This can happen. Those things are out of our control sometimes. So, the host family could change, but these people should be on your contact list. And if they aren't, find out from one of these people who that person really is. So you start with your host family to solve your problems. If that isn't getting what you need, talk to your counselor next. If he or she's not getting what you need, go to your host club YEO or host club president or the district YEO. That's one thing we call the Rotary chain of command. These are the best people to solve your programs locally, because Paul and I from Nebraska probably can't solve your problem, and neither can your parents. We can give you a little advice, but any problem is going to get solved through these people while you're in that country. So make sure you understand that, and make sure you have that contact list and know who you can get a hold of. So we do a couple other things. We, as Rotarians, we train our volunteers, we train our counselors. Most of us have been involved with this for years. If you have any questions, certainly ask us. What can you yourself do to keep safe in addition to following these things and learning who your counselors are? Be a little more careful than you are at home. You know where you grew up, you've been all your life, but cultures are different, communication is different, what's normal is different, so be a little more cautious. Don't be so cautious though you don't go out for things, but just keep your eyes open and know what's happening around you. Learn about your culture, talk to others. One of the best people to start off with are Rotexes. So at your outbound orientation in June, we'll pair you up with country Rotexes for most of you. So if you're going to Spain, you'll be paired up with a Rotex who was in Spain last couple of years, and oftentimes they're the best source of information. If you're not sure what's normal, staying in contact with them even after outbound orientation. Also the in-country Rotex, so the Rotexes in Spain who were in the United States that you may meet while you're there, they'll also help clue you in what's different between the cultures, for example. Learning the language, a lot of our breakdowns come with communication, and obviously if you don't know the language, the communication becomes more difficult. So spending the most time ahead of time learning your language, the better. Try to find an adult you trust. That's one of the biggest things you'll find, not just in Rotary Youth Exchange, but life in general. Finding those people that you trust and that it can be good mentors are one of the most important things you can have in life. Be especially careful in walking or riding a bike in a foreign country. Some of the countries have different traffic rules, and some are on different sides of the drive on different sides of the road, which can be a little confusing at first. One of the best things you can do starting off is finding a good group of friends, hopefully somebody that shares your interests. So this is Winnie from Taiwan, who loved theater and joined a theater kid at South group at the Southwest High School. That became her friend group, and really made a lot of her exchange better. So if you can find that friend group as early as possible, that'll make your group a lot better. So finding that small group, whether it be a sport or theater or chess or whatever it is. Be careful about peer pressure. We have bullies and bad actors everywhere. They're not unique to the United States. One of the best things I've told even my own daughters is a person who's nice to you but rude to a waiter is not a nice person. So some people can put an act on and be nice to you, but one of the best tells for someone who's not really a nice person is how they treat everybody else. So they might be nice standing to you, but if you see them treating somebody next to you, else next to you badly, that's usually one of the biggest tells. People who use other people sometimes have a hard time keeping it up all the time. So watch how that person you're hanging with treats everybody else. If they're not treating somebody well, that's probably not a person you want to associate with. Like I said, joining a group or a school or community group was where you'll often meet your best folks. And when people come to the U.S., I say if you can't figure something out, well, then just join cross country. That's usually a good group of kids. It doesn't cost a lot of money to do. The equipment's inexpensive, so it's something good to start with. Getting to know the Rotarians will be helpful. Sometimes they're also your source of free trips places. So getting to know them, sometimes Rotarians, if they've got an extra seat in the car for a fourth person, and you might be that fourth person. So if they know you and they know you're a pleasant person to be around, you may get invitations to go travel other places and see more of the country by getting to know some of the Rotarians at the club. Also make sure they know where you are. Most of us parents get panicky when we have a new kid that we don't know where they've gone and we can't find them. So try to keep people posted on where you're going to be when you're going to be out. And again, cars. So you are the best person positioned to protect your exchange. So try to follow those rules even when you think they're stupid until you understand why they're there. They'll make a lot more sense when you figure out why we put these rules in place. So parents, please talk to your kids about some of these things as well. We want you to reiterate some of the things we're going through. Many of you may have covered some of these things about sexual abuse and harassment. If not, now's a good time to start. So Rotary has a statement of conduct. Here it is. I won't read it to you because you can read faster than I can say it. One of the things we do put in place is all programs working with youths are vulnerable to incidents. So we try to put checks and balances in place. We do a lot of training with our own Rotarian staff. First, we'll go through some abuse and harassment definitions. So what is sexual abuse? You can go ahead and read this. Pause for a minute. And next, how would we define sexual harassment? We take these seriously, and if you are subject to any of this and you do not feel it is right, most people have some sense that this isn't the right thing. Make sure, again, you have that trusted adult that you can talk to, or if in doubt, talk to your Rotexes about what is normal in different countries. A couple countries we go to, so for example, in the south of Spain, there may be what some people call catcalling, where it's the guy on the corner who says inappropriate things to women walking by. Unfortunately, that is prevalent in some countries. So learning how to deal with that is something that may be a little startling for some of you. It's not that common in the United States, but there are countries where that does happen. But anything that puts you in harm, this is something you should say about. One thing I'd like to point out too is that, again, safety in numbers. Most people who look for a victim look for someone by themselves. So having a group of friends that you can stay with. Also, if you're that friend that can help out, one of the bullying tactics that they're using in Lincoln Public Schools to train to stop bullying is focusing on the fact that bystanders can often stop any bullying incident. Most bullies, in reality, are actually kind of wimps. They won't take on more than one person at a time. So if there's 2 or 3 people who speak out, usually that short circuits a bully. So again, try to avoid places where you're by yourself. When you go out at night, make sure you're always with people you trust. Don't go out solo at night. Neglect can also happen occasionally too. So you have a host family that's supposed to be providing you with adequate shelter, food, and the necessities. So if this is not being done, make sure you talk to somebody and let us know. Verbal abuse will occasionally happen as well. And again, speak out, step up for your peers. Again, we try to watch out for these things, but if you have the biggest thing you can do to help us is to report it. We have had one incident a few years ago, and none of us heard about it till the person came home. So if these are things that are happening, make sure you alert us so that we know about it. So if anybody's keeping you isolated unnecessarily, making derogatory statements about you, your race, or religion, let us know if this is a problem. These are supposed to be something prevented by conduct. We do cover these in orientation. Sometimes it can be a little hard to figure out what's what in a certain country. So in the United States, the kissing and hugging is maybe a little less common, but in Spain, when everybody says hi, it's dos besos and a hug. So trying to figure out what's normal and what's not. And some countries have different norms for what is revealing clothing versus not. Some of these things will be hard for you to figure out. I would say the best place to figure if you are uncertain is talking to the Rotexes about what's normal in a country or not. Some things can actually be perfectly innocent, but some things are not. And trying to figure this out will help you a lot. I'd say Rotexes are probably your single best source of information when you have uncertainties about this. If you do feel that you or a friend is abused or harassed, like I said earlier, make sure you report it to one of us. We can't do anything to help you if you never tell us about it. Again, finding that person that you do trust to talk to is probably one of the most important things you can do when you get into your country, is to figure out who those people are that are reliable that you could report to if you had a problem. We do ask that all cases report to us. This is not something that's going to end your exchange unless we feel it's an unsafe environment for you, in which case you would want to leave that environment anyway. The Rotary Club will take action and should do something about it. If not, that's when we might get involved from the foreign country. So questions about this, I went through this pretty quickly, so what I want you to do is write down any questions related to this, and during the webinar we'll talk about this. I will send out a copy of the slides on a PDF so that everybody has that they can look through as well. If you're like me, sometimes you space out during 15 or 20-minute talks, so if you couldn't pay attention to my voice the whole time, you can always just go through the slides as well. So I'll talk to you in a week or so, and until then.